We've talked about a variety of things. And again, if you're in the back of the room and you cannot hear me, please wave your hand so I'll talk louder. Brielle gave me a thumbs up, so it sounds like you guys can hear me. Okay. But I think we cannot give this Path to Wellness seminar to you without discussing the very obvious fact of human capital. And it sounds cold at first, human capital, because you think, oh, that means I'm just a number. That means, you know, they just want me to be healthy, so they can make more money. Will you shut the doors, please? So let's talk about human capital and why it's important. Because you are of value. And it's not just about you coming to work every day and filling a seat. It's about the knowledge you bring. I've had a lot of conversations with people in this room, and I've got to tell you, you guys are really, really smart. I mean, there's so much brain power in here. It's amazing. And the way you interact with each other, the way you, even getting in the middle of those exercises and giving it your all, you are a really amazing group of people. And DFW International Airport is so fortunate to have all of you here. So you are part of their, what we call human capital. Social and personality attributes. During the day, we had the pleasure of hearing from different people that had questions or maybe comments, and it was so much fun to get a glimpse into your personality and get a glimpse into what you bring to the picture. And if there are times when maybe you're the quiet one and you work quietly, or you maybe make a comment here or there, but you don't feel like you're the one who has all the ideas, well, think about for a moment when you brainstorm. When you brainstorm, what happens? Somebody says something, and then what? Somebody else says something, and then pretty soon, you've all said all these things, and you come to this conclusion that what? Nobody could have come to by themselves, because it takes all of you throwing out those ideas, throwing out those concepts. And so keeping you smart and keeping you on top of your own health and keeping you in the best shape you can be in, physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that helps you in so many ways. It helps you at home and it helps you at work, and it helps DFW International Airport or wherever you go in your life. So creativity, everyone's creative in a different way. Walter and I have 10 children between us, his, mine, and ours. And those of you that don't know, my husband's over 60. So he was the speaker earlier today. But as different as everyone in this room is, so are our 10 children. So creativity is different, and it looks different. Some of you may be able to draw anything. But some of you may be those thinkers that have these great ideas, but you don't know how to put it into action. And maybe some of you can't really come into the action or come up with the idea, but you can definitely figure out how to make it work. And that is what is so important about having this much knowledge in a room. Because it takes everybody, and it takes every kind of creativity, not the same kind. If all we wanted to do was bring in people that knew how to draw, then we would never be using the other side of the brain. And we wouldn't have what we needed. So basically bringing in every different type of creativity and putting them together makes for a well-oiled machine, which is what the DFW airport is, a well-oiled machine. And it's well-oiled because of the people in this room. I applaud you. I applaud you because you are investing in what you feel is your biggest asset. And I know that your CEO feels the same way because I've spoken to you about it. And I tell you, when a company says, we care about your health, you need to give back 10, 100% of your efforts, because there are a lot of companies, there are a lot of people out there that don't share in that. But this is such a great vision because they see the bigger picture. They know that if they start with helping you be the best that you can be, like Coach Rick said, overcoming those obstacles, like Larry North said. Each speaker today gave you some building blocks, gave you some tools to put into your toolbox. So we're just going to build upon that and what that means to you. And then, of course, we did discuss the economic value. But it's not just the economic value for the company. It's the economic value for yourself. Now, what do these companies have in common? Does anybody in this room know? Take a wild guess.
Brand identity.
That's good. They do. They have brand identity. That's a good, you look at it and you know who it is.
Best in class in their category.
Best in class in their category. Good. Yeah, that's a true statement. What else?
High employee engagement.
Say it again.
High employee engagement.
High employee engagement. That's correct. All of these things are correct. Let me tell you something you may not realize about these companies. Every one of these companies, and one of them you'll recognize for sure, but every one of these companies has had a terrible illness or death of a C-level executive at some point. So they did their brand identification. They became their best in class. They did all of these things. Why? Because of the talent they had. But sometimes things happen and illness happens. And unfortunately, I'm looking at a room of what, 40, 45 people? That means some of you are going to face, there's no getting around it, some of you are going to face either diabetes, hypertension, or cancer. Statistically, you will. So it's a matter of finding it in time, doing everything you can do to prevent it. And again, I applaud the company for bringing us in and for this fabulous facility and the efforts that they're making so that we don't have to put your logo up here and say, let's add to the list. Too late. Found it too late. So, okay, let's talk about specific risks to executives. I know that we spoke on this a little bit earlier, but higher risk of heart disease, higher risk of metabolic syndrome. Let's just take those two. And who can tell me why they think those two exist? Stress. Very good. Stress. What else? Lack of sleep. Excellent. Poor eating habits. Good. We touched on that. Restaurants. What else? Travel. Who said that? Travel. I'm going to talk to you just a second about travel. Every time you go on a flight, you must, without fail, drink one of these before you get on the plane, get some water when they come around, and drink one of these when you get off the plane. Flying dehydrates you. You do not want to be dehydrated because our body is made up of a large percentage of water. And you need it. Your brain needs it. Your heart needs it. Your body needs it. Your muscle needs it. Every aspect of you needs it. So, okay, so let's take those things. Heart disease, metabolic syndrome. We named all those things. But what else? What about this? What is that? Sitting down. You're sitting down. You're in front of your computer. You're on the phone. You're sitting in meetings. Sitting. You're sedentary. That's right. Very good. You're like the A student. I love you. If I get tired, I'm just going to pass it off. You're awesome. Can we hire you? But, sorry. Very good.
That's the teacher's apple.
There you go. Okay, so let's talk about risk of depression. What are some of the things that you think, as an executive, would cause you to have a higher risk of depression? We'll start over here because you guys have been a little quiet. Any?
We're depressed.
I think sometimes they say it's lonely at the top.
Yes, it's lonely at the top. And that's a true statement. And we've seen it time and time again. In our 24-page questionnaire, there are questions like, how often do you feel lonely? How often do you feel like you didn't do as good as you should? Because you made it to this level. You made it this level because you're what? Paul, what are you? Competitive? Maybe a little? Just a little? But you're competitive. So you're competitive, and maybe you're not competitive out loud, or maybe you're competitive with yourself. But you put a lot of those pressures on yourself. You know, there's an exercise, we didn't do it today, but there's an exercise where you take a towel and some person holds one half and the other person holds the other half, and you start dumping everything on it. I'm seeing a shake. Somebody's seen this done. And pretty soon, it wasn't the one thing or the two things, but it was the 10 or 12 things that you're holding on to that are just weighing you down. So we know as executives that you have very, very unique issues. Sometimes that depression is, I'm not spending enough time at home. I want to, but I got a deadline. You know, what was that earlier about the picking your kid up from school or soccer practice, getting to soccer practice? You want to, but you have so much going on. So sometimes when there's so much going on, and then maybe you miss something, and you're like, oh, I can't believe it. And the other day I forgot to call my dad. April 15th is my grandfather's birthday. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago at 91. But every April 15th, my dad and I are on the phone. And I completely forgot. And I took about 24 hours. What did Coach Rick say with that glass of water? I walked around with that glass of water for 24 hours because all I could think of was, I can't believe I forgot to call my dad. I just can't believe it. Sometimes that happens. So I want to tell you, it's going to happen to you. And you got to, like he said, forget about it and move on. Because otherwise you're going to add to these risks here. And we don't want to do that. And then, of course, the risk of illness goes up when we're stressed, and we talked about that. So let's talk about what happens with the family. What happens to the family if you get ill? And of course, it's even worse if you die. Let's face it. They need you. An obvious one, loss of income. I've seen this happen a lot, unfortunately. You live long enough, you see things like this, where maybe a mom was stay at home and the husband died. You know, maybe the mom wasn't stay at home, but they're a two-income family. Or maybe the wife was the breadwinner and something happened to her. She got breast cancer, or she had a heart disease, or heart attack or something. It happens. So to be in denial that it's not going to happen to you is just simply unrealistic. I want to share something with you, and it still to this day chokes me up. But we had an executive call us. We see people from all over the world. They fly in from everywhere. But this one particular executive was coming in from out of town. And I don't know why, but when originally I had been the one to speak with him. And he couldn't make it, so he called back and said, I had to reschedule. I know I need to get in, but I have to reschedule. I'm going to go off. I got to fly to Switzerland. So we rescheduled 2 months out because he was going to be on a long journey. And he called back. I know I got to get in. Gosh, I keep thinking about this all the time. I know I've got to get in, but I need to push it out about 3 weeks because I've got a major, major deadline. This actually went on for a year and a half. Rescheduled, rescheduled. Guess what? He came to see us, and he had the CAT scans, and he was loaded up with cancer. Now, it doesn't take a year and a half to die from cancer. So somewhere in the middle of that was prevention. So it was most unfortunate. And I have to share it with you because it weighs heavy on my heart. You know, when Larry was up here, and he was telling the story about the guy with the hot dog, you know, and the beer, and he's like, I don't care. I wish that I didn't have to carry that glass of water around, but I do, because I do care. It just drives me mental. I can't help it. And I tell you, Dr. Anderson, And Dr. Gaman are the same way. A guy came in to see Dr. Gaman, and unfortunately he had to deliver some bad news in the next room to somebody about their wife. And so by the time he walked into the next room, this guy says, "I can't believe I had to wait on you for 10 minutes. And he says, "I've been sitting here for 10 minutes. I got things to do. You need to be respectful of my time." Dr. Gaman was so sweet because he just really could have went south on him and says, he leans in and he says, "Well, Bob, I've been waiting 17 years for you to get your cholesterol down, so I guess we're even." And the reason I tell you that is, please don't put off these health things. Please take special consideration for yourself. When your body's telling you something, pay attention to it. That's what our bodies are designed to do. You know, when you're out there with Judy Skinner and she's working you out and she says, "If you don't feel comfortable, stop," she meant it. So when things happen and you just don't feel right, or you have that nagging headache that's maybe gone on a little too long, or unfortunately you see blood in the toilet and you're like, "Ooh, I don't want a tube up my rear. Yuck, not going there." And I've seen it a bunch of times. People say, "I'm not getting a colonoscopy." Well, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and look your spouse or your kids in the eye and let them know that they weren't worth that. Because all colon cancer starts as a polyp. And a polyp is non-cancerous. It's a little pouch inside your colon. You go in there, you remove it. Guess what? You don't get colon cancer. You leave it in there, you do nothing, it will turn into cancer. And if it turns into cancer, depending on how far along it goes, you may be or may not be curable. So there's only so much as health professionals that we can do. So to give Larry's analogy, if you were to stand up and go, "Yeah, I've had shortness of breath and chest pain," I'm not going to look at you and go, "I don't care." I'm going to look at you and beg you to take care of yourself. And I'm going to beg you to take care of yourself because maybe right now, you know, you got other things going on, or maybe for some reason you're sad. And taking action on your own health just isn't something you want to do. Whether it is lose weight, eat right, whether it's something, you aren't feeling it. Well, you know what? You got to start feeling it. And if you can't feel it, you need to fake it till you make it. You need to say, "I'm going to make a choice to get better. I'm going to make a choice to choose better foods, to take that walk at night." One thing we tell all of our executives is, I don't care what time it is, 2 or 3 hours before bed, you need to do something. Walk around the block, get on the treadmill, somehow get that stress of the day off of your shoulders. We also encourage them to journal. I think one of the doctors spoke of that earlier. Journal those thoughts down. It's really important to get them out of your head. Because what happens if you go to bed and you're thinking about everything? Have you ever done this? Oh. And then your eyeballs start going like that. Then you decide, am I going to get up? Maybe not. Am I going to get up? And once you kind of go down that road, you cannot turn your body off. So journal, get those out of your head so that you can turn your body off. Because you got to turn your mind off so you can relax and turn your body off. So just a couple other things. What happens when your health fails? Loss of intimacy. And maybe you've experienced this, or maybe you know someone who has experienced this, and that is, you don't feel good, or maybe your back hurts, or maybe, I don't know, whatever. You know, you got allergies, and pretty soon you're so focused on the I don't feel goods, what happens to you and your spouse? Start going like this, right? Pretty soon you're like, man, we don't hold hands anymore. We're not going on our date night. We're not sleeping together. And pretty soon you realize that you've pushed away the people in your life. And all because of what? You didn't address something health issue wise that was going on with you. So if you have something going on with you, pay attention to it. And don't just Band-Aid it. This is a really simple thing that I can tell you about, what I call a Band-Aid. People have allergies, they'll go to the store and they'll go and they'll pick up different meds, right? And they'll go home. Pretty soon they're like, I am fighting with everyone in my family. They're all wrong and they're all making me really mad and my boss is a jerk and they're going off on everything that's going wrong in their life. Well, maybe it's because they picked up a little box with the letter D on it. Decongestants will make you cranky. They will make you not be able to have an erection. They will make you, women, not be able to have an orgasm. There are certain medications that shouldn't be taken all the time, and people don't realize that. So even though they're over the counter, doesn't mean it's a candy store. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So let's talk about corporate effects when things go wrong. I mean, we looked at those different logos of different companies that have had things go wrong with their C-level executives, and it's really amazing what happens to the stock market. I mean, you guys kind of remember the whole Apple thing. It was a little shaky. Oh, what's going to happen? Can we exist without him? What's going to happen? You know, we've seen, and even with JCPenney recently, not that they've had health issues, but they've had turnover in some of their human capital. So what happens? Everybody says, I don't know. Can they make it? I don't know. So this goes back to how important you are as an individual to this organization. You're so important because you play a very unique role. So look at the picture on the screen for a minute and visualize your workspace. Just for a minute, your own workspace. And I want you to think about yourself not being in that seat. And I bet every one of you in the room sitting there going, well, I don't know, nobody could get all that stuff done that I got to do. Or you're thinking, gosh, I couldn't imagine not sitting in my seat every day. It's really, really important, the role that you play here, the role that you play in your own life. Nobody else can fill your shoes but you. And, you know, sometimes things happen and we just can't help it. I mean, they happen, right? People need their gallbladder out, or they're in a car accident. So even though maybe just a short surgery will take care of that, or some rehabilitation, if you've ever worked where that has happened to somebody, then you know what the chaos is. You think, oh, where was this left? Or how do we do that? I think we have some IT people in the room. Aren't you IT? Yeah. What would you do if he wasn't here for 2 weeks? I mean, you know, it's really amazing because you're thinking there are there are things that you can't do without the rest of your team. Okay, so we're going to talk just a minute about healthcare in general and the costs that it has. So if you look at health and wellness and you look at illness in the workplace, look at this. Impact of professional productivity, $1,700 per employee per year. So that's $225 billion a year to our economy that's lost because of illness. And then, of course, we all know the issue with increasing health costs. There's a number of reasons for those increasing health costs. A lot of it has to do with covering indigent patients. A lot of it has to do with the business itself and unfortunately the CEOs of insurance companies taking $1 million bonuses and denying care to certain people. I'm not making a political statement. I'm just stating facts. I mean, this is something that is going on. It's a reality for all of us. And then, of course, I pledge it, what was it, 45.5%? That's where you guys are? I'm so excited about that. I'm so excited that you have measurements that you're taking and you're keeping track of that, because if you don't keep track of it and you don't measure it, you don't know where you're going. Obesity costs money. It costs a lot of money to a company. It costs a lot of money to a family. And what goes along with the obesity, diabetes, heart disease, all of those things, they really cost a lot of money. But even more than costing money, they cost us in ways that we can't imagine. They cost us because maybe we can't wake up, like Coach Rick says, and say, "Good morning," because we don't feel it. So it's really important that you take care of yourselves. So let's talk about how you can save yourself. These are obvious. They are. I mean, don't smoke, don't drink, and reduce your stress. So let's take just a minute on each one. Let's talk about smoking for a minute, because this always fascinates me. On the 24-page questionnaire, it says, "Do you smoke? Have you ever smoked?" And a lot of times people say no. The very next question is, how many cigarettes, cigars, etc.? So they'll say no, and then they'll go down and I only smoke 5 cigars a month. That's smoking. So we have to be honest with ourselves. I am always amazed at how these will be filled out, and on the drinking questions, they'll say light drinker. But then when it says how much, 4 glasses of wine, 3 beers, and 2 hard liquor shots a week. Those are low numbers, folks. Those are low numbers in comparison to what we see. The doctors actually have made the comments, I don't know how half of these companies run because everybody's drunk or high, because there are questions about drugs too. So, for us all to pretend it doesn't exist is like having ostrich syndrome. You know what ostriches do? They stick their head in the sand and they can't see it, it doesn't exist. So we do know that these are common problems with executives. We do know that they don't think smoking a cigar is smoking. We do know that, they think light drinking is a couple glasses or wine with dinner. Well, wine with dinner every single night and then maybe a couple beers on Saturday. It all adds up. I know both doctors touched on inflammation. And smoking and alcohol are major contributors to inflammation. Inflammation leads to every disease state we know. So I encourage you not to smoke. I encourage you not to drink. And if you are going to drink, please make it a real light drinker or a social drinker. Very, very important. We always say, if you're going to drink, no more drinks than 2 a week. And people go, 2 a week? I can't do that. Yeah, you can. So find time. You need to find time for your family and your friends and yourself. So take those family vacations. Make sure you're taking that time off. Make sure you're spending time with your family. This is really important. It's not just important to your kids and to your spouse, it's important to your own health. Study after study proves that if you have good family relationships, then you're going to have better health. It's a bottom line, proven fact, over. Ask Harvard, ask Yale, ask everybody, they've studied it. And of course, friends. Doesn't mean you got to get out on the golf course, that's just an example. But socialization is extremely important to your overall health. Again, research has proven socialization. You may be the biggest introvert in the world, so you better go find a hobby where you have to talk to somebody and you actually like doing it, because it's really important. And then, of course, spend time with yourself. Exercising, going to the spa. There's actually a chapter in the book. Everyone says I wrote it for my own self-gratification and so that I could get away going to the spa. But there's actually a chapter in the book that talks about going to the spa. And I'm going to tell you there's a couple of reasons that's important. So specifically, we'll take massage and then we'll move on. There are so many nerve endings in your body that must be touched. And so many times in our society, especially now with the social media, by the way, Facebook is not socialization, so just so you know. But with the social media and the texting, we don't have as many face-to-face conversations. We don't have that kind of touch you on the shoulder or touch you on the back or whatever. Years ago, and you may be familiar with it, there was a study out of a Romanian orphanage. And they couldn't figure out why these orphans were not thriving. It was called failure to thrive syndrome. And they finally discovered that it is imperative that we are touched. These babies, they did nothing else different, but they hired nurses to go in and pick the babies up out of the cribs and rock them. And they had to do it for at least an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. Guess what? They started gaining weight. They started growing taller. The little Romanian orphans were like tiny. And they started reaching milestones. They started being able to lift their heads up. They started being able to sit up. These orphans that weren't walking at 2 and 3 years of age were finally walking at 10 and 11 months. Healthy leaders and healthy leadership is so important. You have to lead from the top. If you want DFW International Airport to be a healthy company, healthy all the way around, then you, as the leaders of this company, you must be leading from the top. You must be a good example. If you think of it this way, if you have your children and you go home and you're eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast and you're having a hot dog for lunch and you're having a bowl of cereal for dinner, can you actually look at your kid and say, "Where's your fruit and vegetables?" They're going to go, "What?" So this is, in a sense, you're playing a parental role within a company when you're an executive. It just is the way it is. You have to lead by example. So I ask you to be a beacon of light for others to see. This is not a religious plug. Whether you're religious or not does not matter to me, but we do morning prayer. And we do it in a circle, and when it comes around to me, I always say, let us be a beacon of light for others to see. Because I want my kids to remember that. Now, before I let you go, I want to tell you a very quick story. I know Dr. Anderson spoke about an upcoming book we have, be out next month, called Age to Perfection, How to Thrive to 100, Healthy, Happy, and Wise. Writing that book changed my life. And it changed my life because I had the privilege, and I say this most humbly, the privilege of interviewing people that lived past 100. And I just said, tell me anything you want to tell me, but you got to give me your top 10 reasons of why you think you made it to 100. And it was amazing to look back, as I was putting all of those into the book, to look back and see the similarities. So just for a minute, let's see if anybody can guess what was on the top 10 list. Anybody?
Positive attitude.
Positive attitude, yes. And it was on everybody's top 10 list. Remain active and exercise. Yes, yes, yes. Oh my gosh, hands down. And they still do it. There's actually one of the ladies that we interviewed, you can see a YouTube interview on her. Her name's Beatrice. She's over 100. She goes to the gym every day. And she does all the weights, but no weight on them. But she's amazing. But she says, well, as long as I can do it, I got to do it. You got to grease the well-oiled machine. That's what she says. And it's really fascinating. Anybody else have another one on the top 10 list? Yeah, Brielle? Forgiveness. That's right. I don't know if any of you saw the clip on Good Morning Texas, but a couple of weeks back I was on Good Morning Texas with Lucille. I know that Dr. Anderson mentioned her name, and you guys were probably thinking, who the heck is Lucille? Lucille is very near and dear to my heart. There are times in your life when you meet somebody and you know they have made an impact on you. Maybe that's a parent or a grandparent, or maybe it's somebody that you just met. About 8 months to a year ago, I interviewed Lucille. We clicked instantly. She never had a daughter, so I guess I'm her adopted daughter. But she says, you must forgive. She says, you don't have to forget. She even says you can give him a hug and pinch him if you want. But you absolutely must forgive. She said she is, in her life, had so many opportunities to hold grudges and to be upset. But she said she knew she'd never, ever, ever, ever live to 100 if she took the opportunities to just spend all her time being mad. I'm a little teary-eyed because I went to see Lucille yesterday. I was in Utah, and an email came through to our website because her family didn't have my information. And it just said, Lucille's been sick. Please have Judy call me. And so I immediately called. And they said, oh, she's been sick. She's been asking for you. I said, oh my gosh, I've been out of town. I'm so sorry. And I said, I'm gonna get over and see her. And so I went to see her, and she looked pretty good. She was all upset because she lost a tooth. And she said, I got a dentist coming out making me a new one tomorrow. And I'm like, she knows she's gonna live longer because otherwise why get your tooth fixed, right? But unfortunately, her heart stopped. She is not they didn't know she was a DNR. DNR means do not resuscitate. I'm glad they didn't know that because I was gone. So she falls, and they get on her, and they get to putting the paddles on her, and they get her back. She comes back. She says, what the heck just happened? My chest is killing me. I said, well, your heart stopped. Sorry, we didn't know we weren't supposed to resuscitate you. You know what she said? Well, that was a quick trip. Where's Judy? So I went to see her yesterday, and we spoke, and I want to leave you with the fact that everyone needs something to look forward to. Everyone. When I saw Lucille, we laid out the plan to write the next book, Lunch with Lucille. We figured it's going to take us 4 months. We're going to have lunch once a week. Got to do at least 12 weeks. And she said, I'm going to save the most juicy part for last because the book's got to be good. So I want to leave you with that. I want to leave you with, we can all make it to 100. We can all make it past 100. There's a wonderful lady who's called a supercentenarian. I can never say the word right, because she's 112. And at 112, she's still making her own bread, and she's doing the little Scrabble every day, and she scrubs her floors on her hands and feet. Now, I don't scrub my floors on my hands and feet, but we all have to have something to look forward to. We can all make it to 100. We can all put in the effort to make it as long as our bodies will allow us to, but we have to be good to our bodies, and we have to be good to each other. So I just want to leave you with that, and I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. And it was definitely our pleasure. Each one of the speakers enjoyed coming today, and I hope that you enjoyed us as much as we enjoyed you.